Does anyone ask you if you carry Malifaux recently?
What?
Malifaux.
Spell it for me.
I can't.
The answer is no.
Oh,
No,
man.
they have not.
Well, they really just stopped asking, I think.
They did stop
after
asking.
many years, yeah.
They did.
Well, here we are. I'm not happy to be here. Malifaux is a game. I'm going to start out just with a bit of context. Malifaux is a game we both really liked.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked it. I had a huge collection of models. I played it for years. I got in pretty much at the start of second edition when they basically started to they're committed to making everything plastic. I thought that was really cool. Mm-hmm. So I basically just every time a guild thing came out, I bought it and I painted it, bought it and painted it, and I basically kept that up for many years. And when we opened our hobby shop in 2015, we had it as one of our products on day one on the wall.
It was had its own sizable section of our store. It was a pillar.
Ooh.
And we got a bunch of people into it that were
Oh my gosh,
looking for new experiences.
tons of people. Yeah, so
yeah.
it was a simpler time when we had lots of different small miniature games on the wall, and they all thrived in their own way.
Yeah, it was
Before the mighty Games Workshop woke up, the slumbering
beast woke up. Yeah, there was a small window of time between 2008 and 2015 where a non-GW game could slide in and have a significant presence. Yeah.
So, it was a decent seller for us. We actually hosted many tournaments and events. At our bigger events, we had Malifaux events as well.
Very unique game too.
Very unique game, yeah. They kind of did what I think Atomic Mass later picked up on. I think they kind of got this from Malifaux, where Malifaux was one of the first companies to kind of really refigure out that they could outsource the building of their miniatures to China.
Yes.
And that was how they could kind of compete with Games Workshop in their own, like in terms of quality and giving the plastic experience that a lot of people were starting to demand, I guess.
Yes.
And we saw other companies not get this right. Like I think, Privateer went the other direction. They're like, oh, how do we do something that's similar to plastic but not really plastic? Mm-hmm. And it didn't really work out that great.
To make it in-house still or something, yeah.
So I want to be really clear. I think a lot of the miniature and rule stuff and setting stuff Malifaux did, the product was fantastic itself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it had a lot of good things. The building on the Lovecraft themes and building their universe in that spot was very good. Because it's like beloved and lots to explore, lots of great stuff.
They had this amazing ability. I remember, like, as a salesperson selling people on Malifaux, mm-hmm. It was incredibly easy to be like, oh, this game has every trope you can think of.
Yes. There's
no way there's not a set that you're going to be interested in.
Yeah.
It has mechanical dudes. It has nightmare dudes. It's got demons. It's got undead guys. It's got
cowboys.
Cowboys. It's got the
Asian ninja, whatever.
Yeah. And then mixed versions of all those things because they used to have like hybrid kind of crews and stuff, and
then full narratives for each of the crew masters, stories, and they would write, what do you call it, like lore and stuff, where the story would progress and they would be involved in different things. Yeah,
really cool.
It was very good.
The game was very chunky. Like it was a very thick game to understand, like lots of rules, but it had a very unique card flipping mechanic, which people really liked. No dice, which was really neat. People liked that. It was hard, but very rewarding when you got into it. Yeah. Really, really, really great game system. I think they were also really early adopters on the idea of like these like your kind of like victory points or whatever you want to call them, being sort of like not random, but like you could kind of pick them out of a bunch of them, mm-hmm. and then they're secret, which was like really neat. Or you could show them off to kind of get more points.
Yeah.
They're one of the first companies to kind of do something like that, which I thought was really cool. So they very, very innovative company. Like they had a lot of like things they did first, which I thought really worked well. Like I said, the product was good. And in the early years when we got into it, I think they had a really big presence at Adepticon. Mm-hmm. They were running demos. They were kind of
they had big booths. Yeah.
Doing all the right things.
Yeah.
What? As we change the mood of the video. So what? When do you think it started to go wrong? What? Because I know what I would point to. What would you point to?
I don't think my answer is going to be as exciting as yours.
Oh, okay, fair enough. Yeah. Hey, maybe.
No, I think look, we probably this again is a whole nother probably video. There's a specific spot in the trajectory of the graph for every miniature game where, because we've witnessed this now like a bunch of times, whether it was like War Machine or them or Atomic Mass or whatever. It like you have this amazing product, really cool theme, good game, check, and your popularity is rising, and then you hit this like inflection point where there is like you have the early adopters that like the game because it was like they got there first and it was like niche and there's like certain things, but then the company needs to like hit that thing and then hit their second edition just right so that they can now onboard new people, not piss off the original people too bad, because that always happens. You're going to attrition some, and you need to have and that's usually what happens is because the company is usually new and fledgling at that time. Often, they need to accommodate the business side just right, because otherwise they overspend or they overreach or the logistics get screwed up or they make the game too hard. Something weird happens and then you could just die. So we call this the no plan problem, which I think is probably what happened to them.
No plan, TM.
The no plan. So whether it was War Machine Mark II to 3 or Malifaux, especially their Mark II to 3, but even
that
midway through 2, you kind of like start, and then they get into their own like, which I think you're going to allude to, into their own like sales business practices that just become you're just destroying everything you built. Especially with your retailers that are like doing all this work for you to get your game up and running. But for me, I'll let you handle the business part there. But I think in the game terms, it reached a climax there where it was just like the bloat. We've talked about SKU bloat many times. The model ranges were getting huge. The complexity was getting out of control. Getting new people in was very difficult because like so much you had to explain.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of, someone, and I'm sure someone at Weird would argue, well, that's what makes our game special. I'm like, yeah, but you can have both. There is a way to do it to make it work. And it's also that like never retiring things, all of this. So anyway, there.
I think it was Nathan Carolyn, I think was the guy's name, the owner.
They're still in business, technically.
Yeah, no, they're in business. And we'll talk about it at the end of the video. The thing, like, just to add on to your point, because I think you brought up a really good thing that I wasn't going to talk about. It's almost like a race car changing gears, right? Edition changes or whatever, or decisions, product changes. You have to change gears at the perfect time on a race course to maximize your speed, to not to fall off, not to crash,
Mm-hmm.
And they are definitely a company that I think lacked experience and lacked understanding about what those things were. Mm-hmm. And I heard about from first edition to second, they almost went bankrupt. And it almost cost them and they kept doing this where they announced their new editions so early that people just stop buying. This happens every time. People just stop buying your products. Like if you tell someone there's a new edition of something, like Corvus Belli just announced N5 a month or something like before it comes out. Like it's not, like they're not being like, okay, so next year in the summer we're gonna put out N5.
Yeah.
People like they're not, the walls would start falling down basically at Corvus Belli headquarters. So they did that a couple times, and that almost cost them dearly. But yeah, what Jay said I'm going to talk about is the, and I think like you said, it kind of comes from, it probably came from that. Mm-hmm. This, when you're small, and we can relate to this because we're a very small business. When you're micro business. We need a new designation for business, micro business. When you're small and you're threatened, obviously the amount that needs to happen for you to close, it's not like the margins are so small, right? Yeah. And I think this is the thing with small miniature companies. Having almost been bankrupted by like going from first edition to second edition, and all the investment they made, and then like not getting much sales leading up to second edition coming out, probably made them think about things like selling direct and how they would sell direct to customers. But the promise, this we've done this in other videos where we talked about starting a hobby store and stuff like that. The thing about selling hobby products is we're not selling TVs, we're not selling I don't know, a video game or whatever. There is extra work that goes into selling these products, like creating a community, creating a place to play, creating a place to learn something, answering questions, helping people learn the hobby. And places like us, the friendly local gaming store, we're in the trenches doing that work, right? So when other companies sell direct, that obviously competes with we're trying to sell their product for them on the shelf. So there's a competition element there. When things are, all things being equal and prices are the same, I don't have a big problem with that, really. I think it's fine, it's fair for people to do that sort of thing. Like Games Workshop obviously does it, right? They're the big guy, obviously. But obviously it'd be better if they didn't. Retailers would make more money if they didn't sell direct. But that's obviously really profitable for them to do that.
The one thing that Games Workshop does is the only models that they make inaccessible to us are some Forge World pieces,
right?
Which are usually so niche and so expensive that it's not.
The margins are too small.
Doesn't impact us that much anyway, because it's for the super fans.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they give away some, but they're usually not minis. They're usually like some coins, or maybe they'll have a store birthday something in their own store.
Generally, the rules are
and they're not.
These are unspoken
models.
rules.
They're just like alternate versions usually.
Yeah. These are unspoken rules, but these rules are kind of generally followed across the industry. Don't release things early directly. Like, don't sell things early. Don't sell them for cheaper. Don't sell unique things that we can't sell, right? And early.
And early. That's the best one.
Oh,
they start combining those don'ts into super don'ts.
Yeah. So and then all those three things together. Yeah. Like early things for less money, and also giving special things. So Weird Games through pretty much the entire second edition had these like Thanksgiving and Easter 2 times a year.
At least 2 times a year.
They'd put up a list of all of their stuff that's coming out for the next 6 months, and being like, you can buy all this early through us right now. They didn't discount it. It was full price. But what they did, which is sort of like discounting, is for every bracket of money you spent, you got free things.
Yeah, shirts
swag. And like they had limited models that were really sought after. That was the big thing, right? The really cool. You got like
somebody's got an alternate guy,
different version of Teddy, or like cool stuff like that were just like awesome. People wanted them.
Yeah.
And what happens? What happens is your most passionate Malifaux people in your shop that love the game so much are like, I can get the Dreamer 6 months early.
Right.
Sorry, man, I'm going to do like.
And they read his rules and they're like, this sounds awesome.
And then what happens is the byproduct of that is those people start coming in. They're coming into your store. Those guys are probably running stuff at your shop,
right?
Because they're the guys.
Yeah.
They have the henchman program, I forget what it was called.
Yeah.
They're showing up with their stuff that you can't even buy on the wall at the store you're supposed to be supporting.
Yeah. And
this just kind of like...
It's not even like a 3D thing, or like they have official rules and the official model from the company.
Yep.
You got it early.
and I'm just sitting here just looking at them, and I'm like, I'm supposed to be excited about this happening? Like, and what happens as a retailer is you start to resent those people, right? Now I'm mad at the customer for not supporting the business he's playing in. But what is it, like? He hasn't really done anything wrong, right? That's the thing. He's done what Weird wants him to do: is support the game. So Weird was basically creating these like negative emotions in us. They're basically saying like, trying to direct the customers way early to their product, and you're just kind of looking at your shelf and being like, why am I carrying this again?
Chris, didn't they just like say, I'm sorry. We're gonna throw you a bone. If customers spend, I don't know what it was, $70 CAD, they can take a snap a photo of their receipt from your store, and then we'll send them something cool in the mail. Yeah, that's great. But also, we're gonna continue to sell things
after doing that for like 3 years
and not stopping it, and continuing to do this after.
I actually forgot about that.
Yeah.
I actually forgot about that. Yeah.
They were trying to be hey man, I'm really sorry.
It was
really
the handshake knife. Yeah, it was totally the handshake knife. It was so. Oh man, yeah, that's really funny. I forgot about that. Yeah, they had that thrown that little gesture to us or whatever. No, they're not going to just send us a bunch of cool models that we can give to people.
Right.
There's a whole process that's really annoying and convoluted to do for people. Instead of just stopping the thing they're doing, which is really harming people, like harming the businesses, right?
Yeah, and I think, and that was a factor. And I'm trying to remember what the market penetration was. I think there was, not every store had it. Like, a bunch of us did, but not everyone. And I think there was, like, definitely, and they had other small things. Like, they had problems with, for the event running, you know, they bungled that a bit. There was a problem, at least in our geography here, with, like, so they had their henchman program. And actually, this is of course another video we haven't tackled yet, which I'm sure we will soon. Is the problem with the press gang or
Grey Knights,
just a Grey Knight and whatever the volunteer
programs, yeah.
But they decided that they looked at the area, the Greater Toronto area, which was like 8 million, 10 million people, like a lot of people, and they decided, yeah, one guy's enough. One guy.
That's right. They wouldn't approve people.
Right. Like, our store had like 20 active players and had like multiple guys that were like.
And we're trying to get one guy sanctioned, and it was so
that we could run events.
It was unbelievably hard
with prizes and stuff.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, there's a guy. They checked the Google map and they're like, oh, he's like 20 miles away or whatever within the radius.
One was Ben Davis, and he was in London,
Ontario. Yeah.
And God bless that man. He's such a good dude. He would come down and run things for us occasionally, but like, man, it was like 3 hours away.
Yes, yeah.
And then there was a guy named Dave who was out in Toronto, and he didn't want to travel outside of Toronto, which I can't blame him. I don't think he had a car.
Yeah, if you live in the most urban environment, you don't need a car, so why would you? And then you know, he would go to a few spots, you know, within his like 30-minute commute range, but he was going to come out to Oakville.
It's funny because this often happens. It's obviously Canada, a pretty small country in the grand scheme of things. We get this happen. We get a lot of this like U.S. Canada bias, where like people in America don't understand how big Canada is.
Yeah.
It happens all the time just because we have a small population, but the distances between places are massive still, right? Yeah. And they'll be like, oh, you know, I remember having someone, like, I think it was a trade rep from Games Workshop call, and they're like, this is when I worked for GW, and they're like, oh, Benoit in Montreal, you know, his package got sent to you. Can you just like drive it over to him?
Yeah.
And I was like, drive it over to him. It's 7 hours away.
7 hours away.
And they're like, oh,
yeah. I mean, if you're gonna pay me for 3 days, of travel,
and all the gas and
accommodation,
like, I still don't want to do it actually. No.
No, God no.
No.
So that was I would just add that on top. It wasn't like the reason, but it was contributing.
So you've got that going on through all of second edition.
Despite that, the game still did Still did okay. Was kind of hanging on there, and then they're once again announced pretty early that they were going to transition to third edition. Way too early, of course. Way too early. So of course, no one's buying Malifaux for like 6 months again. Oh man, yeah, maybe longer. Just because I remember it got kind of delayed too. It took like the date kept getting pushed, and and then because it's a game. A bunch of games fall in this category now. They were one of the early, from that era. Well, a game where every box of models comes packed with cards. Yeah. And so when you flip an edition, all of the boxes on your wall have invalid cards in them. And this is before like downloading rules was really easy and prevalent. Maybe they started doing that later, but there were some decent.
Yeah, they had an app that came out with.
There were some decent apps
that was good.
But even the app was people like the card. What people did is they would it was the War Machine thing. You wanted to put the card in the sleeve, and then you use your dry erase because there's so many things to track. Yep. In the game, different depending on if you had triggers active or how many health boxes and all this junk, and so the third ed launch was like heavily predicated on card packs, and so as a retailer, like we hate these things because it's always you have to guess like because they sell card packs per like faction, and a faction can have like X number of crews in it. With like a few hundred cards. Yeah. You have to be like, well, which ones do we just get 5 of each? Oh no, but there's actually more of this faction for some reason, so maybe we get more of that, and then you over-order ones and under-order others, and you disappoint people because they can't get the ones they need, and they literally can't play without them. So that was, I remember that was they did not print enough of those, and that was a problem. And then later, of course, we were stuck with some that we just never sell.
Yeah, of course.
And then of course on the wall, then it would look awful because you'd be like, no, it's okay, because someone prospective person would come in and be like, no, all the models are valid. You just got to buy this different card pack. But then they see there's like, well, there's some boxes that say, M3 on them, and they're like, well, that's already new and ready. And anyway, it's messy. I would say the least. I will say the one thing about the GW model, as much as we hate the codex is refreshing all the time, is you have none of that nonsense with what's on the wall. The boxes just stay evergreen. And it's just the books that change.
Which is a big deal.
You don't have to reskin them if you don't want, like all those things. So, and I will just say about the game is it did have it had a bit of that problem that I guess AOS 3.0 had, or various versions of 40K, where it got pretty bloated. There's a lot of like the conditions. So basically, like, you could give conditions to models and slow them or put them to sleep or paralyze them.
And then there was there's a lot of unique conditions. So there's like 30 or 40 or 50 of them.
So many
in the game.
And then, as much as I loved the card mechanic, I personally feel, and I don't think you could really change it.
No.
Maybe it's a moot point because that was a signature part of the game. But I loved it because I'm a card player. But there are some people where it was actually a bit of a barrier because you couldn't just roll the die and see a result right away. The back and forth that happened.
You had to do math, and there was
so you're like okay, so you flip cards like a game of war, and then you got cheat cards out of your hand, and then the suits also factor in. And there was a stack of who got to cheat first and how, and you could extra cheat, and then like being a card player, I would card count.
Yeah, of course.
Based on what was in my graveyard, and it'd be like, oh, okay, I'm gonna have face cards coming up soon, and all that stuff. And anyway, it also made every operation, even the most trivial one, take forever. And I'm not a game designer, so I don't know if there's a way to make this faster, but these things coalesced and did make it tough to start to sell. So when 3.0 came and they claimed that it was faster and better, I just didn't see it or whatever.
And I think saying too, like, the expectation isn't that these games ever get as big as Games Workshop. That's right. Like the expectation, and we'll always point to Corvus Belli for this because like they're still after 10 years on our wall, like a game that's not going anywhere, because they've been so consistent. So consistent, consistent with how they treat retailers, consistent with how they put models out, consistent with how they treat their customers. And when other companies are inconsistent, that trickles into how we feel about carrying them, and then we make decisions about that, right? And Malifaux 3rd edition, like when it came out, it was actually did pretty well. That's the last like month or two we carried it basically. Like we got to participate in the third edition launch. It actually sold pretty well. People seemed to like it. And then
I think the follow-up stuff was so delayed.
We had an incident that happened in Canada that's unique to Canada. This wouldn't have happened anywhere else in the world, but it basically killed Malifaux in Canada, which was the major distributors decided that it was too much of a hassle to carry this game.
Within like a week, they
both dropped. They both dropped it for and this is the thing. Like, this is probably a conversation for a different video, but like, miniature games are already a hassle for any of these distributors to carry because of the number of SKUs, the slow turnover of the stuff. Like, it's not like selling Magic where you're just flipping stuff and making money, quick bucks, right? This stuff sits in the warehouse and turns over slowly. So they already don't want to like really deal with it. And then Weird decided, without really talking to these distributors or having a conversation, like the no plan, right? That they were going to just sell direct to retailers, which is great, which is really good if you have a plan.
Yes, they did not have a plan for Canada.
No, Canada was not part of their plan,
and they had a lot of shortages of things. So we were looking at it at like, we don't have any threshold that's like reasonable. There's not enough new stuff that is out coming right now to like fill a card up. It's starting to sell less and less in the store, and then so that we don't have enough to fill with restocks, and the restocks we want you don't have. So it just really turned into this like mess. So it basically, for frame of reference, some of these American miniature companies, they will have some sort of. They know that Canada, they got to sweeten it a little bit to make it work. Where they'll make like, okay, if you because it's the crossing the border. It's the shipping and brokerage just goes like eats away any margin you can possibly make. So they'll say things like, okay, we'll meet you halfway on some of this, but like you have to spend whatever an X amount.
Yeah.
And and you're like, okay, that's fine. I can't order all the time, but I can like wait a little while and we can accrue some things. It's not as great as the distributor model for us.
Yeah.
But it does work. And that was obviously the nail here in Canada. And I feel like it's a nail in some other markets too, because like again, if you see their like overall footprint, and again, the Adepticon example is just one. I'm sure there's shops where it's doing fine. But you can definitely tell that outside of the continental US, it really has just like shrunken down. Like their Adepticon presence is much smaller now. And you just don't hear about it as much. I don't have people talking about it. I feel like if it was this big booming game, you would hear more chatter about it, even in Canada. But it's just not.
I don't even see ads like in the world of ads and
no YouTubers.
It's a big selling
like
thing. 100%. Like one thing Steamforge Games has done really well within the last couple months or whatever is, man, they get social media.
Yeah.
And people are talking about it, and it's a conversation. But Malifaux is just it's nowhere to be seen. It's not really online. It doesn't seem like, and maybe I've been out algorithmed, but like that's what paid ads are for, right? Like to get in people's faces and do that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And when companies aren't paying for ads, it's usually because they can't afford it.
Well, I have one more point to make.
Oh boy.
They decided. Now remember when a small game does this, it's I guess I'll ask you this. If you've just barely learned to ride your bike with the training wheels off, Chris,
oh my god,
is it a good idea to just like decide to like move straight to like a crotch rocket like motorcycle or whatever?
I'm gonna say no.
Or to just decide you could fly a plane or something.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with this.
So.
Yeah. Are you going to the other side?
We're going to the other side. We're going to the other side, Chris.
No. I was like,
we're going to the other side.
I was going to be a little merciful and
just saying, like before you've mastered the one thing, you decide, let's make another game.
We're really good at this. We should do it twice.
We should do it twice.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if you've heard of a game called The Other Side. You probably haven't.
Probably not. Oh no.
Because despite having an entire wall of their products, which is now, I'm much happier. It's GW Specialist Games.
That's
so
right.
Much better decision. But they made a sequel game that had nothing in common with their other property.
Yeah.
Except for like some aesthetics and some background. But
it was part of the same universe. But there's absolutely zero model carryover
at the time. Yeah. And again, and then also like you described how from going 1 to 2.0 and nearly bankrupt of them, they went through another like let's do this thing, this crazy ambitious thing. They wanted to basically move Malifaux from the tight 3 foot by 3 foot like squad versus squad, really crunchy, detailed, interesting, unique, lovable game to a more of the War Machine AOS where we have like 20-30 models aside. Skirmish warfare game, and it did not go well.
And they did the thing every retailer in the world loves. They kickstarted it.
And
it bombed.
It bombed.
There's no other way to put it.
And I remember here we solicited our like fairly large community, and we're like other side, and it was just crickets. Like there was no, it was weird how
it was weird.
It was weird how little people cared about that thing. Now, I've seen like I actually, it's funny, before making the video, I went to the website just to see what was going on in the world, in their world.
Yeah.
And I think they've become aware. So obviously, it sounds like they are somewhat stable. I don't know. They probably are doing fine. Obviously, the U.S. is a very large market, and it's more than enough to allow a company to continue. And this won't take long anyway. And the where was I going on with it? Yeah, they're still around, and I've seen that they've made posts with the someone's trying to get in. Yeah, they just need to wait another minute. I've seen posts where they've acknowledged like the direct sales thing. They keep saying stuff like, well, I guess they still go through a few U.S. distributors, so maybe they've met halfway with them, or done something with them, and then they've also They have some stuff where they'll direct ship, but they definitely have a like, yeah, but we're not responsible for customs and this and that. Like, so they really don't have a plan still there. I don't think they care anymore. I think they're just like, they just let Canada go and they're like, whatever.
I literally wrote like a massive email several times to the distributors begging them to bring Malifaux back, by the way. Because I love the game. Like I said, started out that way. I've been fighting more than anybody for it.
And I've seen, now their other side offering is not very big. They did release enough, I think, for like a small or whatever. I think there's half a dozen factions, and they have some kits, like 3, 4, 5 kits per. I don't know how much more is happening in that realm, but I did see they have boxes that say M3 compatible. Like they've tried to make models and things. So it looks like they have that, but it just seems like it was weird to not have a natural connection from the get-go. I think that was a bizarre choice. It would be okay if it was like a completely different setting or game altogether, or maybe it was like before times or way in the future, but it was like anyway. So I don't think that helped either.
There's nothing. That's the thing is, man. Sometimes you just gotta realize what you are and be okay with it. You know, like I don't. Sometimes it's like growth isn't always a good thing for some companies, right? Like sometimes being really good at something and doing it really well. I think of like a really nice restaurant. Right. It's like, this restaurant's great. They're not trying to
open a chain. They're just like...
The problem is you can't often do that, right? Yeah. What made you great at doing that one thing isn't necessarily transferable to a second location or to a second game, right? And I think sometimes that like causes these small companies to go out of business. I very rarely see it succeed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
well, on that note, thanks for watching, guys. Let us know what you think. Do you even know what Malifaux is? Do you like these sorts of videos where we talk about games? Do you have any games that you want us to talk about? Let us know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, and check out our Patreon, where we're going to have some exclusive content soon coming up. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.